If we don't split now, it'll be much harder later. Together was written and directed by Michael Shanks and stars real-life couple Dave Franco and Allison Brie as Tim and Millie respectively. They move to a different side of the country so Millie can pursue her job teaching, and even though Tim misses his friends and misses the musical gigs, he's going to try to make the best of these new digs. And he is going to try to see if this new beginning will afford new opportunities, not just for him, but for Millie, because they love each other, they appreciate each other. Even though the relationship is at times strained, we are going to see if they will be ordained to be together. And once they get into the groove of their new house, they decide to explore the woodsy grounds, and then they find more than they ever could have hoped to bargain for, and now they must find if the relationship will rise high or fall to the floor. So, this was distributed by Neon Studios and together has received quite a bit of attention on the film festival circuit. Critics have lavished it with praise. They have said that this is one of the best movies of the year, the best horror movie of the year. Depends on, what critic you go with, but it has been lavish. Just absolutely slathered with praise. Like we're slathering butter on a goddamn bagel, or we're slathering cinnamon toast crunch on a bagel. I don't know if you really can liquefy a cinnamon toast crunch, but I may try to do that in the morning. But that being said, this movie, receiving that much of attention, when you see a movie, getting this kind of attention, getting like that, and seeing the advertising and the marketing campaign, I will say this much. Neon Studios absolutely understands how to advertise their movies. They get it. They 1000% get it. Them and A24, they understand how to advertise their stuff. And I was very excited to see this, so much so that I decided to actually see the latest showing possible at the local cinema. And when it comes to films like this, it's best not to know that much going into it, so I'm going to keep it as spoiler-free as possible. If you've seen the trailer, you might have an idea where this movie's going, but me oh my, down on the freaking body horror bayou, it certainly can be a bit disturbing. I will say that there are some parts, they're devastatingly dark, they are horrific. There are some parts that will make you squirm, make your skin literally crawl, and by the end I had a big fucking smile on my face. I had a blast with Together. Is it the best horror movie of the year? No. I'm not going to say it's the best horror movie of the year. That is not to discount any effort put into the project by Michael Shanks and Dave Franco and Allison Brie and the respective other characters, even though it really is just about Dave and Allison. Not Ted and Alice, as it were, but basically, the thing about this movie that was also hanging over its head, and I'm going to talk about that really quick before I talk about more stuff that I liked, is, well, there was a copyright infringement, like a cloud hanging over this film from the creator of a indie short called Better Half. And it was apparently from 2023. And there are certain aspects of, that carry over into this where you think, well, maybe where there's smoke, there's fire. There's a certain discussion about, about a certain thing that ties into, that I'm going to talk about in spoilers. There's a certain, discussion about history that ties in. And there's a reference to a certain musical group. And also the overlying thing of what ends up happening, because Together does end up becoming literal. I will say that. And it is a barn burner of a fun movie. It is darkly comedic to the point that you are going to be laughing at parts you probably didn't expect to laugh at. And I will say, Allison and Dave were absolutely committed to trying to deliver the best performances possible. I do want to shout Mia Morrissey, who plays one of the best friends. She is beautiful. I mean, she is beautiful. But the thing about this movie that made me laugh was it was filmed in Australia, yet there are Washington State license plates. I live in Washington State, by the way, in case you wonder why I would find that humorous. But the thing is, it starts with a great opening, just to set the fucking tone. And then we see, things like how, the relationship between Tim and Millie maybe isn't as rock solid, and maybe, you're kind of questioning, is this couple really meant to be together? But then there, certain things happen that maybe, make it to where it's like, okay, they're like drawn to each other. There's just a lot of really, really good, relationship allegory, this like stuff in this. Visuals, it's visually very impressive. There's a lot of great cinematography. I loved a lot of the shots in this. I just liked how it made me laugh, but it also made my skin crawl. This didn't make my skin crawl as much as Bring Her Back, and this is a little more dialed down despite some of the bonkers shit that we see later on. And once it hits the second half, holy shit, does that stuff go nuts. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's like maybe 95 minutes. But man, it is a teetotal blast from beginning to fucking end. I've loved it. I was having a not a laugh a minute, but man, there were some parts that were just making some people squirm. It wasn't a very full theater, but people were squirming. I'm just like this. I'm just like a giddy goddamn school, student, just having fun, just having fun, just watching horror, because when horror is like this, I just absolutely get into it. So I am going to get into spoilers, but it's in theaters right now if you want to check it out. 3, 2, 1, and spoilers. So I will say, as I said about the copyright infringement, if that actually turns out to be true, then that's some bullshit, and they better pay some restitution. And Neon Studios, they better pay some restitution to the filmmaker of that. So we do start off with a search party looking for, a couple named Carrie and Simon, and voices Carrie because they're looking for them, and also there are these 2 dogs that happen to be down in this weird pit with this, it's almost a cave-like situation where it's like it's looking a little bit weird. It's an unusual cave, but there's this watering hole, and unfortunately somebody did something to the watering hole, because the watering hole has magical properties. Magical properties in the sense that, yeah, if 2 people drink this, they're going to end up together. By hook or crook. And I mean together. I mean like this. I mean the Human Centipede fucking movies are thinking, my God, lads, you went a little bit too far here. Now, no, the Human Centipede movies went further, but this was literally just getting... Picture the Dylan, you son of a bitch handshake ending up where they're fused together, which would be a little bit difficult for, nevertheless. So we see, these dogs, and I mean, I felt bad for the dogs, but it's like they didn't hurt actual dogs, but the dogs had drank from it, and then they were acting all weird, staring at each other, acting all weird, and then weird mutation stuff happening off camera. The little girl's like all disturbed about what's going on. The little girl, I think, ended up, her name was Anna, because she ended up being one of Millie's students. Anna and her fused dogs, as opposed to Anna and the Apocalypse. But they, the dogs are fused together, and then we smash cut to the together title. And then we are, we see Dave Franco. By the way, the good Franco, it seems like he's not like, James, but he's trying to pick out a certain album. They're having a party, kind of a going away party. I'd say, again, Mia Morrissey, my word, what a captivating beauty she is. Not that nothing against Alison Brie at all, but I was just like, Jesus, okay, let's have more of Mia Morrissey in some movies. But Alison Brie also has such a varied career. But the thing is Alison Brie is trying to, Millie is trying to get Tim to come out for this party. And she decides, after talking to Kath, Mia's character, I'm going to propose to him. So she proposes, but proposes like that with a ring. But there's no ring. It's just like she's Hadoukening him. He kind of pauses and is a little bit thrown off. And that ends up kind of becoming, a recurring theme for this whole thing about him kind of being a little bit off, because he's a musician. He's trying to make the best of this situation, moving out with his longtime sweetheart, but he also wants to go on tour. But the thing is that they're going on tour, but he's not exactly succeeding. He doesn't even have a driver's license. He's pretty much relying on her, and he's pretty much leeching off of her without really wanting to admit it. Even though he is apparently a good cook and he has other qualities, she loves him, but yeah, there's a strain that's starting to go on. And after that doesn't necessarily go well, he wants to marry her, obviously, but he's a little bit caught up in the moment. And then they're talking at night in bed, and she basically says, if we don't split now, it'll make it that much harder later. Those are words that unfortunately come very, very true. Um, so we do have we have them move out into the countryside, and it's near the same area where Carrie and Simon were being searched for. And there's this part where this power saw, this little, like little, plug-in saw thing, the part with just the saw like this and everything, but it's like, I mean, it's a little power saw variation. But he says, "Oh, well, never let me use that. More on that later." And then he smells something weird, and he notices something in this light, and he takes off the light. It's one of those big old, screw-on lights, and pulls down the fixture a bit and starts pulling something out, and has to get gloves and stuff because it's dead rats. It's like a circle of rats, human centipede of rats, as it were, even though they're not human. But that's a little disturbing. Then they go exploring, and he ends up falling down a hole, which is where those dogs were before. Now it's in a storm, so they can't exactly climb out. I don't know how in the world they got out later, but they don't have a whole lot of supplies because they got lost because they're not used to the area necessarily. And Millie has introduced herself to, she's ingratiating herself in at the school, and things are going good. But they decide to go exploring, and then they end up in this cave, and basically, bingo bango, they need to drink. I'm not drinking that, but she ends up drinking it, and they end up drinking, and it's like the thirst of life, shall we say. It's where you thirst after somebody. I am a 44-year-old man talking about how people thirst for each other. There's something wrong with it. It's the unquestionable thirst of having to be with the person that is your other half. Because there's something about Plato's Symposium that gets brought up a little bit later. And then there's even something that, like, Kath was talking to Millie about, and Millie even said, when I told him that one of my favorite group was the Spice Girls, he brought a Spice Girls album. And there's one particular song I'm going to talk about a little bit later on that the Spice Girls did, that literally becomes, it literally becomes true. Let's just say that. So they end up drinking from this water. They fall asleep, waiting out the storm. And then they wake up and their legs are kind of stuck together a little bit, but they have to pull it apart. And then they got these gashes on their legs. And, okay, they don't think anything of it. They're waiting for it to heal. He goes to massage her, but then he's having some weird, disturbing stuff going on in his head. And that doesn't end up, really leading us down a great path. She decides to go to the goddamn store to get some stuff because their phones got submerged, maybe get new phones. And then he's in the shower, and then suddenly as she's turning, he's flopping around because they're connected now. They're connected by the water. And that was a great scene, by the way. Great overhead camera shots with all that, so we could not see so much so much Dave Franco dick, unless you're into that, you weirdos. But that was some great stuff. That was some really, really great stuff. And a little bit earlier, he was talking about the rats being something that reminded him of something that happened as a kid. His dad kept smelling something weird, and he found a rat in the light. And then a little bit later, the dad somehow ended up dead, and the mother was sleeping next to his corpse. They didn't really explore much of that. That was a little bit disturbing. There were some disturbing images, but the shower part was great. And then he ends up at the hospital, or a clinic, and he gets Valium or whatever they call it. I forget what they ended up calling it because I was taking some notes during the quiet parts, taking them, in a notes app, because I wasn't disturbing anybody. It was a pretty empty theater. But they're muscle relaxers, so that way if your mind's going, it'll make your muscles relax and you can actually maybe fully relax. More on that here in a minute. And I'm not going to get into every single thing going on, but Jamie, who is a great character, and Jamie, by the way, played by Damon Harriman, is a colleague, and he seems to know a whole lot about stuff that happened because when they were walking before they fell in the hole, they were seeing some weird bells and some stuff. And he mentions, oh, there was an old chapel that ended up submerging. It was like some kind of weird new age cult, and I guess everybody just dissipated. Weird how he would know about that stuff. Gee, I wonder why. And I think one of the funniest scenes, I mean, it's funny to me, it's disturbing, but it's funny, is, Millie's feeling her hair being pulled, and all of a sudden she wakes up and he is literally ingesting her hair. I mean, it's like and I'm not talking pulling it with his teeth. He's literally ingesting it. It's literally going down his throat. She manages to pull it out. He's trying to pull it out and that kind of stuff. And a clump falls out. And then that next morning, he's pulling the hair out like from between his teeth. Really good stuff. And then he is going to go off and do his touring gig. He gets to the train station and he just feels like he has to be close to her. To be fair, not only are they a real life couple, it would be hard to resist Allison Brie. It would be hard to do that. But he finds her at her school where she's, teaching the kids, but they're on recess. And he bangs her in the bathroom stall because Shaggy is, not Zoinks, but Shaggy the singer. It wasn't me, that song. He basically bangs her in the bathroom stall, and yeah, because remember the thing with the legs and that kind of stuff. Well, guess what happened here? His dick got stuck inside her, and she had to basically find a way to pull that out, and oh, it was so good. It was so good. I loved it. I was having such a big smile on my face throughout most of this movie. You can recoil, but you can smile. That was just great shit. My God, that was great. And things just get more and more unraveled. There is a point where, like he feels he has to be close to her, but they can't be that close together because whenever they get together, they lock up, literally. And there's a great dream sequence, or well, what you think is a dream sequence, but it's actually them just falling, kind of falling asleep, and they're getting close together. More on that here in a minute. And one thing that kind of kicks off this whole deal, and she has talked to Jamie about this, and Jamie talked about how he lived with somebody, partner. He's gay. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. If you have a problem with gay people, get the fuck off my channel. And no longer there and stuff like that. And geez, let's see, couple. A couple, one's still there. Weird cult that just kind of moved on. Water that fuses people together. I wonder what we're going to go with here. And basically, she ends up kind of getting sick of how Dave Franco is acting, getting upset at how Tim is acting, because he's acting all weird and disturbed and all fucked up in the head. But the thing is it's because he feels this compulsion to be close to her. See, originally, he wasn't sure about the proposal, but now he can't get away from her. It's like that episode of Tales from the Crypt with the love potion. And you give too many drops and everything, and then she follows you into the afterlife. Nobody knows what the fuck I'm talking about. If you do, I love you guys. But, she kind of references the fact that, I've given a whole lot and everything to this relationship, and you've just been acting weird and everything and stuff like that. I have sacrificed, and yeah, you may have moved here, but you still want to be there with your friends. I feel like I'm turning into your mother, like I'm living with something dead. And then we get, I think, the funniest scene. He's still doing some research, and he's looking at Carrie and Simon's post and stuff like that. And they have spotty internet connection because they're out in the countryside of wherever the fuck in Australia. Even though it does look like the Pacific Northwest. So, nevertheless, there's a point where there's, she's boom, boom, boom. She's doing some she's just doing some stuff against this glass door that almost looked like a shower door, and it's just so good because he lets her in and she falls right on this kind of stuff, and he has to end up slapping her to wake her up. And then they end up locked up because they end up sleeping in separate rooms. And then they end up doing something where it's like he's trying to twist his body to stay away from her. She's trying to, like, she's doing a bending part. I like women that are flexible. Maybe not that flexible because that's a little bit demonic. But I wouldn't say no with Alison Brie though. But they end up basically trying to get, stay away from each other. But they end up holding hands and locking up. And it's just like this. And it's just this nasty little, absorbent deal. And then he says, get the Valium or whatever they end up calling it. And crush it, and we're going to take pills. Oh no, we're going to snort it. Because they're trying to relax their muscles. And if they can separate them. They can do that. And they can beat this thing. The problem is they're going to need another prescription because they end up basically utilizing the whole damn thing. Now, they wake up the next morning and don't worry, everything's fine. Except for the fact that their arms are kind of still together. And it's her dominant arm. And she's going to use the saw. And she ends up using a saw, but gives them alcohol and does this stuff. And they end up doing it, and it's just so hilarious. They just show enough of it, so it's disturbing. And then they're bandaged up and they're eating that kind of stuff. But they need to end up maybe getting some more prescriptions. And she said, I just saw it through our fucking arms. We are going to the hospital. That is an all-time line. But he ends up needing to find answers, so he wants to go back to the cave. She ends up going to talk to Jamie. And it turns out Jamie, lo and behold, shock of shocks, is part of this whole cult. He was going to show her a video earlier that was a wedding video. It actually is a cult video with the church, the bells, and all that stuff. And by the way, a little bit earlier, you had to ring a bell, looking just like the cult bell, to get his attention at his house. And so basically she ends up, because she left her keys there when she ran home to talk to Tim, because Tim was right outside the house because it's a really small neighborhood, just in the middle of the fucking woods. But basically she ends up getting, a complete explanation from Jamie, or at least as well as possible, and says, all this is this fusion and everything. It's already happening. You wouldn't like the alternative. The alternative basically is probably you freaking feel like you're going to die and you end up dying because you're separated from each other. And that's where Plato's Symposium was talked about. That was something that was discussed earlier before he mentioned the wedding video. That was actually the cult video. And that's where the copyright infringement thing apparently was coming in too. But again, I don't know how much of this is true, and I don't know how much this is. I'm just going basically with what was said in rumor and innuendo and innuendo. And now, one final thing. They are basically trying to stay separated from each other in their driveway. And he basically pulls out a knife. Now, how did he get that knife, you're wondering? Well, while he was in the cave, he ends up seeing this fused together couple and pulls the knife out, chops some of their fingers off, and climbs out. So now he's got the knife. That's just a little catch up there. He's got the knife. He ends up basically, he's going to end up taking his own life. She ends up, however, basically taking her own life. And that's it. She's going to bleed out. That's fine. Everybody's free. And then she wakes up wondering what the hell happened. The only way you could stop the bleeding was to do this. And then they got fused. So he negated the whole goddamn thing because he couldn't let her go. Well, did you want to let me go? No. Or did you want me to let go? No. Because they're happy together. And they stop fighting it. They get fused together. And it's disturbing. I mean, some of the CGI is a little dodgy, but it is what it is. They get all fused together. Their eyes are fusing together. It's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. And basically, one thing about this is her parents were going to come over for lunch or dinner. So they're fused together. House is set up for dinner. And suddenly, they answer the door, and it's a fusion of Alison Brie and Dave Franco. Pretty good fusion, by the way. I do want to say that. And, hi. And then that's it. We smash cut to credits. So that is it for Together. That is it. Really, really fucking good. Again, I liked bringing her back a lot. That's why I got the sweet shirt. I like bringing her back a lot more. But I like Together so much just because it's a different type of horror. And that body horror stuff, that bathroom stall scene, the sawing, the end sequence, really, really good shit. I really enjoyed it. A plus. Fucking great. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Rickland. Until we meet again, happy trails to you.